Welcome to the Hustle or Bust podcast powered by Paver Art. Our mission is simple: to dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship, small business, and all the success, struggle, and challenges that need to be confronted in the pursuit of growth. We celebrate the entrepreneurial spirit, but perhaps most important, we want you to learn at least one idea that you can put into action immediately to make your investment in time worthwhile. Episode 6, the mentor-protégé relationship and the value of candor in the workplace. In today's episode, we dive into the world of mentorship, developing young talent beyond simple on-the-job training and in the context of growth. We also cover candor in the workplace, the adult conversations that confront the brutal realities all businesses must address to get to a new level of performance. Mentorship and confronting reality. Hope you enjoy it, and we also hope you find a nugget or two of value for your business. The more you get into this subject, the more it's not a question of being careful. It's just a question of recognizing the fact that it can be a little bit controversial when you're talking about not just a young man or a young woman, but their family, their parents.
What do you when you think of mentor, what comes to mind in terms of defining what a mentor is?
Well, I can only, and I think for the purposes of this particular episode, I would have to say that a mentor is somebody who's not just a journeyman that's going to teach you the trade, but a person of responsibility that's going to teach you how to work. And a lot of what we do here, especially what we're doing right now and what we're doing this summer, is tied to the Brick by Brick program from Paver Art. By the way, brickbybrickfuture.com is the website if you want to check it out. And we're attracting kids that are just graduating from high school, okay? And in my mind, one of the things that we discussed very specifically about the four prongs or the four legs of the stool for Brick by Brick was the mentorship leg. And to me, that definition would be one-on-one with the young person who probably has very little, if any, previous work experience, and teaching them the ropes about what it takes to actually work a job. You can teach anybody how to do the job. This is how you swing a hammer. This is how you turn a screwdriver. You can teach anybody to do that stuff. But to get to the core principles of what work ethic is all about, that's in my mind where a mentor, where the mentor and the mentorship of that individual becomes much more important, because that's going to last you the rest of your life. And you may have 5 jobs. You may leave Paver Art. But any job that you go to, you're going to be able to use that template in whatever you do going forward. And by the way, this extends to your family when you create a family, and pretty much the rest of your life. Very broad description. Your idea what mentorship is all about.
So I guess my definition of a mentor is similar to yours. I think about, you're right. There's one thing to learn from other people how to do a job. Right. That's important. But that's a little bit of OJT, on-the-job training. I kind of think of a mentor as broader than that. So it's kind of think about life and the coaching that you get through life. It's almost like a parental father figure, if you will. So I also think of mentor as a time machine. So you and I, we've got 25 plus years of work experience, and it's, if you can wind the clock back to when you were 18 years old and do things different with the knowledge of all the experience and wisdom that you have now, you can impart that on somebody. So it's the closest thing. I think of it as a time machine. So if we can we can't go relive our 18-year-old selves, but we can certainly give the wisdom that we've learned through the School of Hard Knocks or whatever formal education we've had into this person.
For sure.
So yeah, we've got a job here, we've got a business that we're running, and that requires skills. But there's also, in the context of your entire life, mentorship plays the role to get people ahead of the game. And that's really, can you give them the wisdom? Can you give them the experience? And it's also, I think when you mentioned, what did you mean by expand a little bit when you were talking about the controversial aspect of mentorship?
Well, you're basically taking the place of their parents for 8 hours a day, sometimes more, 5 days a week. That's a big chunk of time. That's 1/3 of their day, 5 days a week. And my guess is that's probably not going to, the concept with some adults and their children, that's probably not going to go over well. What are you talking about? What are you going to say to them? How are you going to teach them? Do you have a background in this? Do you have a degree? No. And I don't think you need to have that. But that's where I think the controversy comes.
Well, it comes to,
and we'll get into the more specifics, the more specific end of this when we talk about the 18-year-old versus the 22-year-old, and you know what I'm talking about.
Well, when you have an 18-year-old kid and the parent's going to have empty nest syndrome, whether the kid goes away to college or they go away to work, the kid's leaving the house, so they're trusting. There's a new phase of life. They're no longer in high school, and they're going to kind of choose: do they go into a trade school, a college, or go into the workforce? So the security, if you will, of the public school system or private school system kind of goes away, and there's a new phase of life where they're going to be influenced by other people. That could be the college professor, it could be the local community college professor, it could be their bosses.
Exactly.
So the question for small business owners, the approach that I advocate for is, whether you like it or not, if you're a small business leader, whether that's an owner or not, or a general manager, it's, you got to train them to do the job and be part of the culture of your small business. The question in my mind, mentorship's a little different. Mentorship is putting your arm around the kid, and we're using kid because we're kind of thinking about the younger adult, right?
You're not going to mentor a 35-year-old.
The cake is kind of baked. I think you're right.
Exactly.
I mean, their habits are formed. That doesn't mean you can't change and grow, but that's a different profile of a human being than an 18-year-old. I think we'd agree, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So at 18, you're a lump of clay, and you've been formed. You grew up in a family. Every family looks different. Every school system looks different. But now you're entering in either college or the workforce, and the mentorship role has the opportunities. I think small business owners have a tremendous opportunity if they get their head around what mentorship's really all about. Right. And not everyone, I would say the majority do not do it. So we talk a little bit about the bell curve and the businesses that grow versus the businesses that just kind of plod along, stasis, if you will. I would venture to guess, there's no study on this that I'm aware of, the ones that are into deep personal development and mentorship are growing at a faster rate. I don't know that to be true, but my gut tells me there's a correlation between mentorship and growth of a business, as well as individual.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. Think about that. Let's, for the moment, talk about an 18-year-old. And this plays on what you just said. You've got a young man or young woman who's never had a job, or in a job that's going to require 40 hours per week of their time, and they're going to be expected to perform. When you come to work and you expect to get paid for 8 hours, your employer expects you to work for 8 hours. You're coming into a situation where probably most of the people around you are going to be twice, if not 3 times your age in some cases. In my case, it would be 3 times their age. In your case, it would be twice. But that's a little daunting. So the whole put your arm around their shoulder concept, I think, is a good one, because that's essentially what you're doing. You don't want to cross that line. That line is yet to be defined, but you don't want to cross that line where you're basically, trying to be their father. What you're trying to do is, and look, we have some selfish goals here too. We want a good employee that's going to stay with us for as long as they want to stay with us, and we're going to do our best to try and keep them there. But we need productivity. We need an honest 8-hour day. We need them to show up on time. We need them to work with the team, which will be a future podcast discussion, the whole concept of team and how that works. and for somebody that's just coming out of high school, that's really new. That's they've not had that experience. Most of them have not had that real experience.
Well, there's two distinctions I'd make. There's one, we talked about it on a previous podcast, the teen labor force participation rate.
Right.
It's half of what it was when I was a teenager. So I was working 30 hours a week as a junior in high school, and I had my own little lawn cutting business.
Sure.
The world of teenagers as a percentage of the total workforce participation is half of what it used to be. It's about 25%. So generally speaking, 3/4 of the workforce, the young workforce, doesn't have a lot of deep work experience.
And let's remember that that line on the graph is trending down.
It's
sloping downward.
It's going nowhere but down. So that's one concept. The second concept, which is a watch out, because I kind of defined it as a parental father figure, which is a very dangerous thing, and I'll tell you why. There's way too many businesses in America, in my opinion, my humble opinion, that talk about their businesses as a family. Big, massively big mistake. Businesses are not a family. Businesses are a team. The team earns the right to stay on the team. Family, you may not fire your mother, although you should, if they need to be fired for the good of the business. Business owners have a tremendous...
Oh my goodness, there's our first controversial...
Look, businesses have a fiduciary responsibility.
Mark would fire his mom.
I would have to fire... If I wouldn't fire my mother... Look, businesses should ask themselves, as you look in the mirror, business owners.
Right.
If they would not fire their mother, their son, their daughter, then they are putting their entire business at risk.
Exactly.
Now, I'm not an advocate for just firing willy-nilly, but this blurring of we're a family, that is a big mistake. Businesses are not a family. They're a team. You earn the right to be on a team, whether that's on the bench or a playing field. Too many, now a lot of this is just kind of philosophical,
right?
But there is a very clear distinction. I think business owners make a mistake when they think of their culture as a family.
Yeah,
look,
but it defines the line. Let's be honest.
My sisters are going to be my sisters for life, whether I'm fighting with them or not.
Right, exactly.
If I'm fighting with you, or I'm fighting with my son, or I'm fighting with our general manager, at some point something's got to give, and you got to stop fighting with them because it's not productive.
Right.
Family is going to be your family for life, whether you like it or not. So there's a gray line there, but I think you've got to, especially, and a lot of small businesses are family businesses, right? So team is about performance.
Right.
If you don't cut the grade performance-wise, you're not going to be on a team for long.
And that mentorship input is not just coming from one person.
That's right.
It's coming from virtually every member of the team. And every member of the team needs to understand that too. When you've got somebody in with, real fresh face, still wet behind the ears, you have to be understanding, but you have to be understanding to a point.
That's right.
And what you just said, I think, informally defines where that line is. Don't step into the the fatherly figure type of situation, because if you do,
as it relates to their performance,
right, and the job.
Well, now, so we defined one data point, which is a teen labor participation rate's half of what it was when we were working. So there's generally fewer people with work experience. So you've got to figure out how to acclimate them to how do you behave appropriately in the workplace. So that's just a fact. The other fact is, when you look at the financial health of America, with $1.7 trillion of college debt, generally people are living paycheck to paycheck. They're financially strapped. They don't have retirement saved. The financial health of the individual is not where it needs to be in America. Well, then how do they get there? So if we've got bad habits in America, they're not saving 10 to 20% of their income, all the things that we know are success-proven principles, mentorship has to play that role. Right. Kids are graduating college with debt. They're not even thinking about saving. They're thinking about paying off that loan and how do you live. So the mentorship fills a void in some of the behavior that we know is a problem in America in terms of personal financial management.
Let's talk. Okay, well, let's get into you're dipping your toe in the first controversial leg. When you start talking about financial responsibility, by the way, that's one of the legs very closely related to mentorship, because when you're being mentored by PaverArt, you're also going to be talking. We're also going to be talking to them about financial responsibility. Now, we're not confiscating their checks. We're not, investing them in, special mutual funds. But we'll talk to them about that. But that's one area where I think, and I think this is where the controversy comes in my opinion anyway, and I think we both feel pretty strongly about this. I'm not sure that a 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th grader in high school is being taught the, even a modicum of information or some kind of background in financial responsibility. And what is financial responsibility?
Let me challenge you there. Why are you not sure? We talked to 100 kids at a career fair. And how many of them knew the cost of college?
You called me on it, and you're right. I am sure. Okay?
You are absolutely sure. They're not. Let's just say the point, and let's just be controversial.
Right.
The school system is failing our kids. They have no degree of financial literacy in mass. Now, some of these schools are having classes in financial literacy, but it's the exception, I think. We talked to 100 kids.
And how deep does it go?
Very deep.
At the end of the day,
if they're not working,
we have some experience with this.
Look, kids, we see.
We have experience with employees that when you say, okay, congratulations, this is your first paycheck. This is a very important day for you, and it's a very important day for us. You should be proud, and we're very proud of you. Here's your first paycheck.
Right.
Now, what are you going to do with it?
That's right.
Okay.
And their eyes are wide open.
We don't necessarily ask that question like that, but it's pretty darn close.
Right.
And when you hear back, well, I have to find somewhere, I guess, to cash it. Excuse me?
It's a bank.
Well, do you have a bank account? Do you have a checking account?
Right.
Do you have a savings account? I know savings account, that just dates me. But I don't expect.
Remember the passbooks?
I don't expect you to have a TD account.
Remember the little leather passbooks?
eTrade.com.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But there's no background information in that regard at all. Now, a lot of this comes from the home. It comes from your dad. It comes from your mom. Some kids get that. A lot of kids don't. That's what we're focusing in on. The ones that get it, the kids like you and I that got out of high school that already had an idea of what we wanted to do with our money, and the whole pay yourself ideal, which is you're going to be paying everybody else for the rest of your life.
Right.
Don't forget to pay yourself, which means saving your money.
Yeah. So let's acknowledge that we're making assumptions or generalizations based on our experience, but we did talk to 100 kids. And I think it's fair to say 90% didn't have a real good grasp on the cost of college.
Exactly.
Right? And if 75% of those kids, due to the teen labor participation, they're not working,
well, how do we know
those
that?
two things are related.
That's correct. And how do we know that? Because we asked them.
Right.
So do you have some idea what it's going to cost to go to college? And 90% of them, easily 90% of them said, I really don't know.
So two facts that we've got to combine. 75% of teens, they're not working, number one. Number two, when they investigate the college, they don't know what it cost. So those two things, and then combined with the fact that there probably is not strong financial literacy in high school. So those kids have two choices. They go to college, maybe they go to a trade school, maybe, or there's some workforce development or apprenticeship program, if they can find it, like a brick-by-brick program.
Right.
But generally speaking, mentors have to fill a void because these kids aren't working, limited financial literacy, the country's in debt, the kids are in debt. There is a massive need for mentors. So it's not just about showing up for 8 hours and doing a job, being trained on how to do that job. It's about this whole other suite of activities that they've got to understand and learn pretty quick. They got to establish habits. To your point on the controversial of, do we expect them to save their money or talk to them about it? Of course, that answer is yes. Let's play this out. At 6 months, if Anthony is our first brick-by-brick apprentice, there's one thing to talk about the value of compound interest. Educate him on that.
Which we've done.
Which we've done. So, okay. Should he come every single month with his bank statements? Should he project his net worth? Should he have a spreadsheet of what is he worth this month versus last month? And talk to us about it, like an accountability built-in session, as if we were the board of directors and he was his own little business. I think that answer, we can make a pretty strong case. That's a fruitful, beneficial activity.
It's a fruitful, beneficial activity up to the point where they've accepted the responsibility, their financial responsibility. The controversial part comes into play when people get concerned. Well, how far are you going to take
privacy?
This? Correct. It's none of your business. Well, it isn't, and at the same time it is. If there's, and by the way, we wouldn't do anything or talk to any of these young men or young women this way unless they were comfortable with us doing that. And we ask them about that. Are you comfortable with us talking to you about this? We don't, we're trying to impart our knowledge on someone who doesn't have that right now, okay? But at some point, they're going to get it. The light's going to go on, and they're going to say, "Oh, now I get it. Now okay, fine. You don't need me anymore." Okay.
You get it. You're building
the basic principles you got. You can take it from here, and the ones that are really interested in it and understand. And by the way, the twinkle in somebody's eye when they get their first real paycheck.
It's real at home.
Real paycheck. It's a combination of being
shock.
I was going to use the term scared. Mm-hmm. Whoa, I've never seen anything. I've never seen a check this big before.
Right.
Okay. All those things that I've always dreamed about getting. Okay, let's relax for a second here. Okay, and let's talk a little bit about, how you're going to spend that. That's your business, mm-hmm. how you're going to spend it. I can't tell you what to do. This is a free country. But we can guide you along the path of saying, pay yourself. Don't forget to pay yourself before. And by the way, here's the value of saving your money also. And here's the value of putting your money someplace where it's actually going to earn something for you while you're not doing anything at all. It's doing it for you.
Think about it from a practical sense as a small business. If you have employees that take their paycheck, whatever that paycheck is, $400 a week, $4,000 a week, doesn't matter the scope of it, mm-hmm. and they consume 101%, they'd be the average American. They're spending more than what they take in.
Correct.
And they're running up credit card bills. That employee is not going to be the most relaxed. If you ever try to hit a baseball that's coming at you at 90 miles an hour and you're stressed and you've got a knot in the back of your head, you've got no shot if you're stressed and tense. If you're loose at the plate and you got no fear for whatever reason because you've put the hours in, because you've got a cushion, the emergency fund and having financial wherewithal translates into performance. And anybody that's ever played baseball or a sport, mm-hmm. when you're tense and tight, you're not going to play as well as when you're loose, right?
Exactly.
The equivalent in the workplace is being financially healthy. The people that are spending 120% of their income, running up debt, no financial, they're living paycheck to paycheck. Mm-hmm. They're playing tenser. They might not know it, but they are.
Well,
that's a performance issue.
It is a performance issue, and I don't think we can drive this point home enough. And the evidence is very, very clear. Look at our economy. I mean, I'm not making these numbers up. These numbers are very definable. A shockingly large percentage of moms and dads in this family in their 40s have given very short shrift to their retirement, mm-hmm. when in fact in 20 to 25 years, which is a very short period of time, as opposed to the 45-year horizon that you have when you're 20 years old,
yep.
They're going to be in a position or want to be in a position to retire. It's by the time you're in your 40s, you got a lot of catching up to do.
You can't outrun the clock.
And how are you going to catch up when you've got
That's right.
2 car payments, a mortgage, you got kids in school?
So isn't the
camp,
opportunity...
That's very difficult to get started then.
Ideally, you'd start when you're 13 years old. Or, in this case, we're talking about young kids, 18 years old. Whenever you start working, you start to develop these habits. Because if you just do a couple $100 a week and you start investing it and you've got 40 years, you're going to be a millionaire.
Right.
But you got to start those habits and you got to have the benefit of time.
By the way, that can be proven. That can be
it's
shown.
Simple math.
It's simple math.
And the mentorship is not about coaching somebody like the OGs, the old guys, right? It is about proven, time-tested principles, but you got to start the habits. You got to actually execute early. And if you don't mentor somebody, they're going to be 35 years old, nothing in the bank. They're going to be working. They're going to go job to job. They might fall into the lost decade. They might get their college degree. They'll have $40,000 of debt. And then they start saving when they pay it off at 35 or 40 years old. Mm-hmm. So this is real. It's tangible. And math is the most quantitative, black and white topic that can't be argued. It's simple math. But to get to those compounded returns over 40 years, mm-hmm. you got to start 40 years prior to when you're 60, as quick as possible.
Well,
that's the time machine. We know this works. The world knows it works. The question is, how do you put it into play? You got to do it. You got to do it early. You got to have somebody holding you accountable, whether that's a life coach, a mentor, a boss, whatever you want to think about. These are important principles to start quickly.
I think we've pretty much hammered the financial responsibility end of it from the mentorship part, from the mentorship standpoint. And let's be honest, that's a big chunk of it. And it's an important chunk of it. It really is. Because it influences virtually everything else that you are able to do in your life as an employee and as an individual. And as a person that, is going to have plans down the road. I mean, these are 18-year-old young people. What other areas besides financial responsibility become, I guess, what would be considered by society as controversial societal issues that we might need to dip our toe in with the mentorship program here at Paver Art?
Well, as a small business owner, don't you have to decide who you're going to recruit, who you're going to hire?
Absolutely.
Right? These are choices you got to make. If you aspire to growth, and again, we're focused on the businesses, the individuals that want to grow, and that's only 15% of the population. It's not the masses. As a business leader, a business owner, you've got to decide at some point who's the new talent that's going to run the business 10 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever that looks like. You've got to make choices on who do you want to mentor, right? So in the world of youth, right, the young market of bringing people into your business, in my mind, you've got a distinct choice. You can recruit the 18-year-old that graduated last month from high school.
Right.
Or you can recruit the, 22-year-old that graduated from Rutgers or any university out the door. And those are two, and if the statistics hold that generally nobody's working, 75% are not working, that's what the stats show, and it's declining. The difference is what? 18-year-olds old out of high school, 22 years with a degree and debt and all the things that come with that. Let's talk about that. Who does a small business owner pick? And they're not binary. You can do both. But let's talk a little bit about the choices that a business owner would make relative to those two topics.
We've talked about this ad nauseum.
And obviously we're biased.
We are biased, and you know my opinion. If I had my choice between the two, I'm picking the 18-year-old.
Why?
I'm picking the 18-year-old because they are indeed a lump of clay. Okay, there's a very, very good chance that they've not had how are they going to work a full-time job when they're 16 years old? They can't. They may have a part-time job, waiter, waitress, busboy, something like that, cutting grass, that sort of thing. And by the way, you know my opinion on this. All work is dignified, and that work is dignified too. Mm-hmm. But it's part-time, and it's to make a little bit of pocket money so that you can take your girlfriend out on a date. You can put some gas in your dad's car, which he's letting you borrow on Saturday night to take your girlfriend out on a date. But there's no real, here's what the real world expects from you when you're working 40 hours a week or more. Mm-hmm. And at 18 years old, I think it's an excellent opportunity to take that person and do something with that, and something that they're going to take of value for the rest of their lives. And again, we have selfish motives here. We want a good employee. We've had some success with this, and we know what we're talking about. When you get somebody right out of college, and please don't misunderstand, the whole idea that you've got to go to college, you're forced to learn time management. College is not high school. Okay, there's more freedom, and with freedom comes an assumption of responsibility that you're not really getting when you're in high school. Your parents assume that responsibility when you're in high school. Mm-hmm. When you're in college, you're not home anymore. You're on your own. You're assuming that responsibility. And yes, there is some part of that makes up the whole work ethic theory. But you're getting to call your own shots. You're getting to do what you want to do when you want to do it. Okay? Now, some kids grasp that. Some kids understand that, and they learn from that. But they've not been out in the real world yet working. They've deferred that for 4 years until they got their college degree. And that's fine. We have no argument with anybody. I mean, you and I both went to college. But in my mind, that 18-year-old is really a blank canvas, and you have the opportunity to give somebody a chance to really learn how to work, learn a skill, prepare for life down the road, and they're getting a 4-year head start on that person that went to college. Now, I know the reason you asked the question. Is there a difference between the two individuals if you hire the 22-year-old versus the 18-year-old? Of course there is, okay? That 22-year-old has now gotten into and learned certain things that may not be, putting him in a position to be a great worker to start. You're still going to have to teach that person, here's what we expect from you, okay? But they may have some thoughts and ideas in their minds that are ingrained that are going to keep them from thinking, well, now wait a minute, okay, I'm not so sure I like the way this is going to get. Well, fine. Well, then you're probably not going to work out here at Paver Art. 18-year-old doesn't have that. The 18-year-old is still, they're still learning.
Right.
No,
I think
you see where I'm going with
I
this?
do. I think it's the right framing of the issue is not 18 versus 22. It's because you can't get 22, 4 years when you're 18 years old is a big difference. You're growing at a rapid rate at 18.
Huge.
Your mind's still developing. So I think the right framing of how you think about it is, would you rather have that 18-year-old and invest in them for 4 years, 18 to 22? And what at the end of 4 years will that 18-year-old kid become if he's working with you? And what will he become at 22 versus this kid over here at 22 graduating college?
Well, he's going to become a great employee.
But there's a tad of arrogance here, I will say. First off, my bias is
okay. Time out. We got to stop right there.
Right.
Okay. I understand why you say that. Okay, because we've talked about this incessantly for the last 2 years, but the arrogance is only there because it's almost arrogance fighting arrogance. You can't argue with what's happening in our society with kids that age. There's just no argument to be made. We see this every day. Those kids who have parents that can afford to send them to college, it's a whole different sphere. Right. That's not the sphere we're talking about.
God bless them. Right.
But yes, does it smack a little bit of arrogance? Okay, yeah, you can. People can be of that opinion.
Well, let me explain why I think there's a degree of arrogance. What we're saying, if we'd rather, and we both are in that camp, we'd rather take the 18-year-old than the 22-year-old college degree. Right. Now, let's qualify this. In general, this is the infamous economic, all things being equal. Most kids in college are not getting internships. They're not getting work experience. They're not starting side hustle businesses. And when you go to college, you've got a ton of free time on your hand.
Sure.
You're going to class 20 hours a week, and then you're expected to double that or work in independent study. But that's a lot. Anyone that's been to a 4-year full-time program, there's a lot of free time on your hands. And you can choose to use that time however you like. So if you're not hardcore internships, compiling work experience, that's the key. Now, I went to a school that you had to work. It was 4 6-month co-ops. I graduated with 2 years of full-time experience. I had connections. I had contacts. I screwed up. I did all the things that you do when you work at a young age. So we're not talking about those kids that have compiled work experience. So the defining characteristic here is 22, 2 kids. Both have no work experience. One's got a degree. One's got the high school. What the implied arrogance is if you come to work for me and you for 4 years, we're going to develop you at a greater rate than this kid that went to college and did not get work experience.
Right.
And why is that? Not because we're great geniuses. Because they're going to work. They're going to screw up. They're going to achieve. They're going to work with people. They're going to struggle to get up at 8 o'clock on a Monday after they've been partying all weekend. They're going to go through the grind, and we're going to see them develop over 4 years.
True.
That's so more valuable, in my opinion, than this kid over here that's compiled debt. Now, by the way, with the debt, if they're the average, again, not the one that you talked about, the parents have the money, they're going to send them to school, they're going to do their thing for 4 years, they're going to graduate debt-free. That's not the average. The average, 2/3 to 3/4 are graduating with $35,000 of debt. That's what the stats show.
Right.
Here's a thing for small businesses who's got to make this choice. Why is that my problem? You're 18 years old, or you're 22. You're coming to me, and you've got $40,000 of debt. Congratulations, you got a degree. you don't have any work experience, you don't have any internships. This kid's got no debt. He's 18, and I can kind of develop him for 4 years. I'm sorry, but the debt is an albatross. Now, it's not that kid's fault that he didn't have money. So, not making aspersions or cast a negative, but I do have to make a choice. Would I rather develop somebody in the Paver Art University, the hustle or bust mentality, let him get to 22 years old, and then see what I got against this 22-year-old kid? I'm sorry. This kid's going to have, the brick-by-brick kid's going to have money in the bank. He's going to have 4 years of experience. He's going to have a body of work. He's going to be getting educated online through that time, and we get to see him. That kid, if it's successful, should be a business owner before he's 30 years old. If he wants to be. If he doesn't want to be, they can be whatever they want.
Or if he goes to work for someone else, and we would hope that he wouldn't, but if he does, that's perfectly fine.
Nothing wrong with that.
But if he went to work for someone else, they don't have to train, mentor, or form him. He's already been formed.
Right.
They're getting what's going to be a great employee for them.
Now, all the people listening to this, they're hearing us say, we take the 18-year-old. They're like, what's going through their mind? In mass, my parents, if they were here, you've got to send Dominic to college. He's too smart not to go to college. Hey, look, Dominic can make his own choice. He's going to make his own choice, and I'll support him.
Oh, by the way, before we
and
forget,
Dominic's our little producer.
We need to nod to Dominic. Dominic, thank you. You're doing a great job.
So, but I think the uncomfortable conversation, maybe this is a bit of a transition, that uncomfortable conversations, 1.7 trillion in debt, people in debt, people with no retirement income, people not performing at their job, a lot of negatives, and in the mentorship aspect, we are biased towards taking a lump of clay as quick as possible and developing them and investing in them and then seeing where they go. Well, we're also, the implicit assumption is the 18-year-old kid needs 4 years to develop, right? Because they're just figuring out the etiquette of what the hell is a bank account. I had a bank account at 12 years old. I was riding my moped with my little leather passport with the dot matrix printer, and they were printing that I just deposited $20, and now my account's $240. And then the next Saturday I go, my little moped or bicycle, and now it's $245 or whatever it is. And there was a habit that was being developed that when you're not working, you just don't develop that habit, that discipline.
Absolutely.
So the quicker you work, the quicker you get that paycheck, the quicker you can start saving and investing, the better. 18 beats 22. 18 zero debt beats 22 with $40,000. 22 at 22, both kids, one with 25 grand in the bank, one with 4 years of work experience. This 22-year-old kid with the debt, with the college degree and no work experience because they didn't choose to use their time that way, they're going to have a hard time competing. Really hard time. That's not conventional. Most people would argue with me that most people would say, oh, but they're going to earn $1 million more over the course of a lifetime. They're going to give me all their stats. Stats can be used any which way. That's my point of view. And I think it's in the minority. Deep minority, by the way.
Well, who would be, outside of any member of your family, who would you consider to be one of the most important, if not the most important, mentors in your life? But outside of your family, not your dad, not your mom, sister, whatever, who would you consider to be the most important mentor in your life?
Well, I've got a number of them. A couple, the first name that comes to mind is Wes Jackson, president of Monogram Foods. I've known him for, since 2000. So it's a 20-year relationship, which are a 22-year relationship. We worked, and by the way, where did I meet him? At Sara Lee, a big company. We were running a brand, Hillshire Farm. And we've known each other for the years, and I went to work for him when he was doing a startup, Monogram Foods, and we spent a great 8 years together. The guy has amazing ability. He calls me, and it's embarrassing. He'll call me to check up on me. For every 100 times, Wes will call me 90 times. I'll call him 10. Mm-hmm. The guy's just got extraordinary ability. He's a mentor that I've always looked up to, and I think it's somewhat mutual. My going-away party at Monogram, he called me his business soulmate, which is one of the greatest compliments I've ever gotten.
Wow.
But he's somebody that when you say mentor, I think about Wes. Extraordinary ability. We had a yin and yang. His nickname was Mr. Revenue at Monogram. He great salesman, great way to grow. My nickname was Mr. Margin. So we had that yin and yang. I would check him, and we kind of had that.
I think I know what that means.
Now, both of us are college grads, right? So we've been through. I think part of relationships is what have you been through with each other, right?
Yeah, but I think here's where the difference comes in, and I also want to have a follow-up question about Wes. But the difference is, you and I both worked when we were in college. Mm-hmm. Okay. and that makes a big difference. I'll give you my story in a bit, but what were those? What were one or two of those principles that you got from Wes that you've taken with you since you left Monogram Foods?
Well, one simple thing is, and it's kind of the second part of our podcast is having adult conversations, right? Mm-hmm. Candor. What's candor in a workplace? Well, candor is calling it like you see it in a professional way, not being an asshole.
Sure.
So, to answer your question, Wes and I, we weren't that consistent with it, but Wes knew and I knew we'd try and make it a point to go out for a beer or a glass of wine or a bottle of wine. Or when I thought our backs were against the wall, I would call him and say, meet me at 6 a.m. at the Panera, let's have coffee. And those were not shoot the shit sessions. Those were, look, we've got to change course here. And he knew that if I called him on that, he would listen, and we'd come to agreement anytime we went out off-site, because this concept of the whirlwind, it's real. You're running a business, you're working 12 hours a day.
Exactly.
Sometimes you just got to figure out a time to get off-site, have that bottle of wine or that cup of coffee in the morning before the grind starts, and have that honest adult conversation. You can only do one-on-one off-site, in my opinion. So what were some of the lessons? I think about those moments over the course of 8 years, and there weren't a ton of them, but there was enough where we had to call time out, and we had to have a really difficult conversation and trust each other to do that. And we had that kind of relationship. I've taken that, and I've implemented that in every business that I've had. I got a key sales leader. I got a key operational person. I need to try and affect change, and how can I do that? And I need their input. I need them to come along with me. Part of this thing with small business, you can't do it all alone. You got to have followers. You got to have people that trust you.
Yeah.
And you got to have those adult conversations. And we have that. We have it every week. When we are frustrated, it's not because something that we're not performing well. It's because the team is not functioning as a cohesive unit, right? Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, those adult conversations that happen outside of the job, and what does that mean for accelerating a business? Those are some of the things I take away.
I had outside of my father, and I think you and I would both consider our fathers to be our number one mentors.
That's right.
And our mothers have a place in there too, a very important place actually. But my guy was a fellow by the name of John Francis, and he was my boss on my first real job, which I got when I was 15. I had to get the papers and all that stuff. I couldn't even drive a car yet, didn't have a license. The one thing I always learned from John was, here's a problem, you caused it, and here's how we're going to fix it, and it's never going to happen again. John was a gruff individual.
How did he bring that to you?
Immediately. There was
urgency.
It was urgency is the exact and perfect word for that. You're doing it wrong. You need to do it this way. I've already told you once. This is the second time I'm telling you. I'm not going to tell you again. You need to get this right. I know you can get it right. You're smart enough to get this right. Now get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And I was surrounded by lifers, guys in a maintenance department, a machine shop, in a shipping department. I mean, you really got down into the weeds when it came to what running an operation was all about, and how you were part of that. You were a small cog in a very big wheel, but a pretty important cog.
Right.
And you're 15 years old. So those impressions were tattooed on me very, very early. And I learned from those, and I still use those. I may not be quite as gruff as John is, although there are times when we call that the...
But he shaped your view, your worldview on work.
100%.
Right? So one of the pieces of advice my dad gave me, you got to find a godfather in life.
Right.
In your work life. What's a godfather? A godfather is, using the true godfather in the movies. A godfather is someone that's going to kind of keep an eye on you, mm-hmm. and kind of see that they've got a little bit of a vested interest, a twinkle in their eye for how you're developing. At 18 years old, my first corporate job was at Kraft Foods as a co-op. Mm-hmm. And I had a number of those people that were kind of interested. Maybe I was the little pet. I was the youngest one, and they were kind of interested in me. They wanted me to come back and do a second co-op.
And you were how old?
18.
That's an important number to impress upon this, that this audience that's listening to this podcast.
But
18 years old, working for one of the largest
food company,
right, in the world,
at their headquarters.
Yeah.
So kind of unusual. And I was lucky. I was the last co-op selected. Nancy Buckets selected me, and I always think about her. But what would have happened if I didn't get that job? It's one of those little fun counterfactuals.
Sure.
If I never got that big break, there's a little luck involved. Gladwell. Who the hell knows what would have happened? Here's a story. I had a pretty decent college track record. I was ranked in the top 1%. I had 4 great co-ops at Kraft Foods. I had a scholarship for being a top performing co-op. I had a track record, high ranking, academically, professionally. I come to graduate in the last 6 months of school, and I interviewed for Coca-Cola, for General Mills, for probably 10 companies. Guess how many job offers I got? You know the story probably.
I know the answer to the question, too.
0.
Yeah.
I got 1 job offer. It was Kraft Foods because they knew me, and they just wanted to stay with me.
Sure.
And a great job. So tell me this. If you have a 3.89 GPA, ranked top 5 of 400-person class, co-op awards, decorated resume, was I that bad of an interview with 10 companies? I couldn't get 1 freaking job?
I don't think so.
There's a degree of luck and randomness involved in
Right.
success, I think.
Sure.
Right? Now, what it also told me is, shit, what if I didn't have that work experience? At the time, let's just say it was a $100,000 education. Today it would be a $400,000 education.
Right.
Would I have been struggling for 6 months to find a freaking job? I can't tell you. We don't have to worry about that because I got a job at Kraft and did very well. But 0 out of 10, that's freaking humbling. And I think about that all the time. If I didn't have that work experience, and look at that, it's not like my resume was shitty. 4 6-month co-ops, great grades. I don't know what more I could have done, and I had a side business. I had a lot of things to talk about. Maybe I was just a terrible interview, possibly, but 0 out of 10 is pretty freaking bad. So, pretty humbling.
Yeah, exactly. And
The Godfather concept, what I was going with that.
right.
I collected a few Godfathers through my work experience, and that opened up the door to get a full-time job. And then once you work, your performance, when managers see you work, and you're either good, bad, or indifferent, and they see you grow over time, massively important. Your degree don't mean shit when you're 2 years out of college. I'm sorry, it doesn't. It's about what are you doing? So, and I think back to 1997 when I was graduating and I was playing my hand at the interview game and all the recruiters coming on, and I'm going on the interviews, had my suit on, 0 for 10. 0 for 10. Now, maybe I'm an anomaly. I don't know. But those are pretty bad results.
No, I don't think so. That shocked me.
Now, what I wanted, this is not a woe is me story. What I wanted was to work at Kraft. But I wanted to play my hand to see what was out there and all that thing. And Coca-Cola, these are big names coming on campus. And, I did great. 0 for 10. Not bad. Let's go back to candor in the workplace and what that all means. Because mentorship is, as it relates to having conversations of growth and addressing issues.
I can relate to that very, very directly.
Tell me your Jim Tate.
Jim Tate, short background on Jim. I have worked around Jim, with Jim, and for Jim since I was 16. And in some way, shape, or form, I have always been involved in his sphere.
Well, we're going to introduce our first guest to the Hustler Bus podcast. This is Henry Bull. How you doing, Henry?
If you're going to call him Hendry, you got to explain why you're calling him
Hendry.
Hendry.
Well, Goodfellas. Henry Hill from the Goodfellas.
That's right.
There was a scene, Robert De Niro, the young Tommy, the young Joe Pesci, and young, not Henry Hill. What was his? He just died.
Oh, yeah.
Ray Liotta.
Yeah, exactly.
Who played Henry Hill, and they introduced each other, and Joe Pesci's younger self said, "Hey, how you doing, Hendry?" So when I think of Henry Bull, Hendry.
And if people are wondering if you're actually watching the podcast, yes, Henry has one eye, and he's Henry Bull because he belongs to Bev Bull and myself, and he's just a terrific part of the family. He really is. Now he's with us here today because my wife is out of town for the next few weeks, and our dog walker's out of town this weekend. So
dogs make everything better. We're happy to have him.
He makes everything. He's come here. He's been, he's very used to paver art. He's used to the guys. The guys love him, and we're glad he's here.
So go on about Jim Tate again. as it relates to Candor and his impact on your life?
Well, going directly to it, I mean, again, I've known Jim Tate for the better part of my adult life, with the exception of the time that I've been here at Paver. I mean, I've known him during that period, but it was before Paver Art when we were involved virtually almost daily in all sorts of things. And once I had, this is when I was VP of Sales and Marketing for a company called Chiarino. Jim had a particular habit, and this goes directly to what you were talking about in regards to candor, and the term urgency. By the way, they go hand in hand.
Yep.
Okay. You don't wait till the last minute to bring up a problem, and Jim Tate never did that. If there was an issue, he'd come into my office and said, "Bull, I got my Red Sox on today."
That was the trigger.
I knew it was a Red Sox day meant
buckle in.
Yeah, it's strap in. It's going to be an hour talk, and it was either something that I did wrong, somebody on my crew that did something wrong, or there was a general problem that needed to be dealt with, and I had to be involved with it, and it had to be done. We had to discuss this and get this on the table right now. I'd immediately put down what I was doing, leave my office, go down to Jim's office, and we would talk, and we would talk, and we would talk, and we would talk through the problem. And more often than not, I was given a responsibility to do something to solve the problem, but he was going to be there as my partner in doing that. And I never forgot that. Never forgot that. Jim just wouldn't say, "All right, I expect you to fix this problem and get this problem fixed right now. I expect that to be done. You've got 5 days." It's not the way Jim operated. He expected the job to be done. He expected me or whoever it was to get that job done. But he was intimately involved in the actual day-to-day process of making sure that got done. And, Jim was your buddy.
Right.
Okay? But he expected you to perform. And the whole, Bull, I got my Red Sox on today. It's just, the pit of your stomach. Oh no, what did I do?
Right.
Well, a lot of the time I didn't do anything, but I was, my department was tied to something that he saw a problem in, and we need to fix that.
Right.
Candor up front, there was no bullshit from Jim. Jim told you the truth, and he was very honest and very objective about that, but he did it in a way that you knew that you were going to get his support when it came to fixing that problem.
Well, your
I never forgot that, and this was, Jim never changed. That's exactly the way Jim was, and
Jim was your father's partner.
He was initially at the same company with my father, and he was in charge of operations.
So he had the ability to fire you if he wanted to
at any point. And then he and my father partnered up and formed their own company, and Jim was the one that came to me as the third person in to this brand new business. At the time, even when I left, it was called Chiarino. I'll never forget, Jim came to my apartment. I had my son Kyle was about 1 year old. My wife was in the apartment. He came to the apartment and said, "Listen, I need to talk to you. You got a couple of minutes?" "Sure, absolutely." I would take a bullet for Jim. And he offered me a job at this brand new company that he and my father had just formed. Now, I knew something about that this was going on, and I knew there was a pretty good chance they were going to come to me and ask me about this. But my father didn't ask me.
Right.
That wasn't his job. This was Jim Tate's job.
Right.
He was going to be responsible for that.
So Jim was a combination of a godfather and a person with the Red Sox, right?
Absolutely.
Paycheck, Red Sox, recruitment, godfather. You don't learn those lessons at college.
Oh.
There is no urgency, and the urgency is a good word. We had this thing. We had text messages, RFN, right fucking now. Right? So in a sales and marketing team, Olivito, your team better pull this Walmart presentation, RFN.
Yeah.
That was code for drop everything.
Right.
This is the priority. It doesn't happen often, but once every 8 weeks, you knew RFN meant RFN, right? You don't get those lessons when it's not tied to your paycheck, to a mentor, to a boss, whatever it is. That's a lesson you don't pick up. All right, you might get a D- on your history exam in college. There is no urgency of Red Sox, RFN, paycheck that you're going to learn that.
Right.
That comes through the School of Hard Knocks, which is work experience, I believe.
Well, we've never forgotten them. We've never forgotten our mentors, and we practice what we learn from them every day. Why? Because, first of all, those practices are successful. They work.
Let's talk to young people for now, because we talked a lot about small business owners. If you were a young person at 18, and we can both rattle off our mentors, one of the things that they should be deciding jobs on, I believe, not just the pay rate. Pay rate's important. Job description is important. Mm-hmm. And a lot of young people don't think 4 years, right? Who's your godfather? Who's your mentor? Does it even exist? You want to be thinking through, because we can talk for 3 hours on our mentors and the impact they had on our life. We can probably put a dollar figure to it. Actually, we couldn't, because it's incalculable, the impact that Jim Tate had on you, that Wes Jackson had on me, and 5 other mentors I can rattle off. Yeah. The young person has got to think, who's their godfather? Who's going to be their mentor? And that goes beyond training them on how to do a job, but it really matters for a young person.
Thirst for knowledge is one thing. Learning, work ethic, responsibility, all those things that are wrapped up in whatever it is that you're going to do. You're going to take that template and you're going to impress that on every job that you have from now until you retire. You're going to take that template and you're going to impress that on your life outside of your job. You cannot downplay this. It's one of the single most important. It's not an idea.
Right.
It's a principle.
That's right.
And if you follow those principles, you're going to be successful.
Now, look, the Jim Tate Red Sox and the RFN, right fucking now, both of them, business owners, business managers, need to have a degree of what's that trigger when you see a problem that is fundamental to the business that if you can't fix, you're not going to grow.
Right.
It is your responsibility to put those proverbial Red Sox on and pull that team together. Too many people are afraid of confrontation or afraid of conflict. But that is, as you think about the far end of the bell curve, 10 to 15%, if you don't have that tough adult conversation, you're not going to get past that issue. I mean, you had a great, remember we were trying to recruit or trying to deal with personnel issues here. You had a great saying. You asked me a simple question. We were struggling for 18 months.
Right.
Simple question. Do we want to be here having the same conversation 6 months from now? And that was like the light bulb moment. And the answer was, hell no, we don't want to be there. Yeah. All right, so what are we going to do about it? That was your equivalent of going to Panera Bread, having a cup of coffee.
Right.
Simple question. It was like the epiphany, right? All right, let's work to get that topic fixed. And once we get that thing fixed, things might be harder in the short term, but we'll move on from that. And we did.
I think we've also generated probably
5 more of those.
5 more topics.
just like that.
Just talking about all these things.
But it's a pretty handy thing as a small business owner.
Right.
Whatever it is that you're struggling with, rank them 1 to 5. Mm-hmm. Ask yourself the question, 6 months from now, do you still want to be dealing with this? And if the answer is no, then start bullet pointing out how you're going to manage against that.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
So mentors, adult conversations, all of them are related to getting that business to the next level.
I think we've expanded and expounded on this subject about as much as we can at this point. We could probably go a little further, but I think it's important to point out that this is our, Dom, is this our 6th podcast? Is that it? 6th or 7th?
Probably 6.
Okay, yeah, this is probably our 6th podcast. So, and the first, probably the top 10 podcasts that you're going to do, the themes are going to be things that you're very familiar with. We're very familiar with the whole mentorship situation, and I felt comfortable talking about it. I know you felt comfortable talking about it, and we know it's a big part of what we do here at Paver Art with our employees.
A lot of the topics, there's a great, it says easy and does hard.
Oh.
To talk about mentorship is easy. To do it and take that 18-year-old kid and to mentor other people within your organization, it's difficult. It's time-consuming. It's emotionally taxing at times. And by the way, not everyone is a candidate for mentorship. Some people just want to do their job, do their 8 to 4, whatever it is, and then go on. There's nothing wrong with that.
And that's fine.
That's
perfectly fine.
But 10%, if the bell curve holds, 10% of your workforce should be in that candidate that if you invest in them, it'll come back to you 5 times further.
If you're going to move your work, I like the word stasis. If you want to stay if you want to stay at your break-even point, you can do that.
Right.
You can do that your whole life. But if you want to move forward, you want to get better, you want to make more money, you want to be able to get into different things, you want to be able to take on more responsibility. Your ability to do that is going to come in large measure from the way you were mentored in regards to your work ethic. And I keep bringing it up, but it's very, very, very important. And the single most shocking number that I think I've seen in the last year is that teenage workforce number plummeting from 75% down. It's going to be approaching, if it's not already there now, the mid-20s.
Yep.
I think that ties directly to what we were talking about today.
We're in the wrong direction, and the thing about growth is, how do you grow a muscle? We got some. I'm not one, but we got a couple powerlifters here.
Oh yeah.
You grow a muscle by tearing it down, by stressing it.
You got to challenge that muscle every day.
And when you wake up the next day, unfortunately, it's sore. So when it's sore, it repairs itself, and that's how that muscle gets stronger, right?
Right. Exactly. And that's
it's a metaphor for how do you grow a business. You got to stress that muscle till it breaks down a little bit, and then it repairs itself.
Gotcha.
Get stronger.
I couldn't agree more. Well. Good day.
Good day.
Now we get to practice what we preach.
Now we get to go to work.
By the way, a shout out to our producer, Dominic Olivito. He's Mark Olivito. My name's Mike Bull. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Great weekend.